BPL. And then Lama, Lota, Yadala, Lota, Ziva, so on, something. Tenga comes out there, and then Lami, to keep the same Lami. Such a temple, sorry. You don't lie, so don't come, sorry. And then control on church on the, and then church of a party, and several years. I think our young so don't sit down, then the million.
Rinpoche continues to say, keeping your vows and commitments in this way, the Guru will grant blessing and inspiration, the Yidam deities will grant accomplishment, Dakinis and Dharmapalas will clear away obstacles. Of this you can be certain. So if we keep the vows and commitments of which we have heard, if we keep our individual vows, our vows of individual liberation, the Pratimoksha or Vinaya vows, whichever we might have kept, if we keep the Bodhisattva resolve that we have taken upon ourselves, and if we also keep the commitments which we have entered into in the course of entering into the Vajrayana by way of receiving empowerments, etc., then we can be certain that all of these vows are being kept in this way, and that what he says in this verse will come to pass. Then indeed we must have no doubt whatsoever that we will not receive, maybe not receive the blessing and inspiration of the Lama, of the teacher. We will receive. Similarly, Yidam deities will grant us the accomplishments that come along through practicing their meditation practices. And if we are free of any doubt, any wrong views about Lama and Yidam, then definitely all of these commitments are being kept just in that. And then also in the end there are Dakinis and Dharmapalas, the guardians, the protective deities, who will certainly perform their activities of clearing away obstacles on our path. So if we keep all of these vows accordingly, then we must have no doubt whatsoever that this will indeed come to pass.
And then gone back meeting, you somewhere. I go to the condo some time. I gone back meeting. Ramgejo, Bema David, Maran Tamarpa, Jo, Bemandama, Dong, Dama. The Yetan David, then the Yetan under Socrates, Taji Lama, Controls, Marange, then. Lamangasi and Oons, Lamangasi and Chase, Lamangasi and Longi, Lamangasi and Namake, County, Future, $10 and the Soka Lama, some Lamangasi on a day, Tam, Sati, Control some, Songi, Jandin, and the Jadu Lama, some Tongi Jidu, appointment background. The Toga Lama, Songi Children, Tongi Jedu, Tangarang, Jola David, and Gombo, Bombe, Jojo, Son.
Dharma continues, saying, having understood this, now follow the visualizations to be meditated upon. Initially we have heard that there are two subject matters. First, the points that need to be understood, that need to be reflected upon. Of these we have heard instructions in the last couple of days. That chapter is concluded now. We now move on to the second heading, so to speak, which is after which we have brought about understanding, we have to put practice we have to put things into practice. We have to familiarize ourselves with that which we have understood so that we ourselves gain experience and certainty. And this is what he continues to explain right away. He explains the visualization that is to be trained in, saying, above the crown of your head, on top of lotus and moon disk, all the roots and lineage lamas with whom you are connected, as well as the 3 rare and precious ones, all appear unified in the shape of Buddha Amitabha. So this is the visualization that he explains that we should train ourselves in. We would imagine ourselves in our ordinary form. There's no particular shape in which we should imagine ourselves at this particular point. And you imagine a lotus flower, a multi-petaled, a many-petaled, multicolored lotus flower above your head, on top of which lies flat a moon disk. All the various teachers with whom you have ever had a connection, your root lamas, lineage lamas, these may be teachers from whom you have received empowerment, teachers who have given you oral transmissions, teachers from whom you have received pointing out instructions, etc., whatever it might have been. All of these teachers and also the lineage holding, the lineage transmitting masters of the past are all present upon this lotus flower and the moon disk above your head. As well as on top of these are also the 3 rare and precious ones, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But we would not imagine them as a large crowd of figures above our head on this lotus seat, but we would imagine them to be essentially present in the single shape of the Buddha Amitabha. So you simply imagine Buddha Amitabha, the red Buddha Amitabha above your head, and consider him to be the very essence of all of these root and lineage lamas, as well as the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, all summarized into a single figure. So as described, we would imagine all the root lineage lamas, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, etc., as a single figure in above our heads, sitting on lotus and moon disk. We would, as Kamachakma describes here, imagine this figure as the red Buddha Amitabha. Then he goes on to say, words of going for refuge and giving rise to the enlightened attitude, or recite words of refuge and enlightened attitude, whichever you know, long or short. So there are many different formulas for going for refuge and giving rise to the enlightened attitude that one could possibly recite. Whichever you are familiar with, you would recite these here. These are the prayers which usually precede any practice, as we also practice them very often at the beginning of our various sessions. For instance, the 4 lines in which it says to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest Sangha, I go for refuge from now until I have achieved enlightenment, and through my practice of generosity, etc., and so forth, may I quickly achieve the state of the awakening of Buddhahood for the sake of all beings. The common words which are repeated, these 4 lines which we repeat 3 times, and indeed this is the instruction here. These words are to be repeated 3 times, keeping the meaning of the words in mind. And particularly in this practice here, we would also resolve to train ourselves, if we would choose the Buddha Amitabha as our training object, to train ourselves in the practice of the Buddha Amitabha until we have achieved the corresponding realizations. Having thus gone for refuge and given rise to the enlightened attitude, we would now continue with the offering of a mandala, and correspondingly Kamachakma continues to say our own body as well as all the wealth or prosperity as well as all our virtue we offer. There's nothing much difficult to understand about these points, and he continues to say, together with the 4 continents in the center of which there is the Mount Meru, as well as all sorts of precious riches and so forth, all of this we offer in the form of a mandala, and we recite the corresponding words. This is the common mandala offering, as we also do it at the beginning of every teaching session, where we imagine an entire world system, the Mount Meru, surrounded by the 4 continents and the subcontinents, filled with all the riches of humans and gods, etc., and so forth. We offer all of this, we offer our own body, whatever virtue we have accumulated, and we would recite the words which are commonly used for that occasion. Yet again, another 4-line verse, which begins with the words, this vase sprinkled with anointed with water and sprinkled with water and anointed with flowers, I present as an offering to the Buddha in the form of the mandala, the 4 continents and Mount Meru, all of this viewed as a pure Ram. So the common words of mandala offering are being used here, and the corresponding visualization, as we have already heard about, is being practiced here. As we have learned, the next step is the confession of misdeeds. Whatever negativity we have performed in the past, in this life, as well as in previous lives, needs to be acknowledged and needs to be confessed before we continue. And accordingly, Kamachakma also says, regretting past bad actions, recite the confession. The words for confession we find in the various prayers, which are known as the 7 branches. They come in various lengths and various forms. The most commonly known ones would be the words in which it says, roughly, since beginningless time until the present moment, whatever in the way of the 10 non-virtues or the 5 heinous crimes I have committed under the influence of veils and obscurations, I confess. So with this, if done properly from the bottom of your heart, if meant honestly, you would confess whatever misdeeds you have performed.
good that's a woman of a Tom Nico, looking on Turkota, the Duke Maluba, all got on the content pen. And on Amideva, you do know Amideva. Then Amideva, young day, and upon that, so at that is, and Jola Yoga upon the good. And that's again, woman of a honey. And Mara, Songa Purana, and Songa, and Omaka Yandara, and Tiga Noni, Ma Pani, and Mara, Luga, no Tony, have one make a good ditching, council song. And Marange, the bottom, Droba, Nino, Nasa, last bottom, Boake, Koa. That end of Naranga, all good, Naranga, Papa, Tanginima, Sarah, Daini. Then Saya Wola, and Chadoxin Jig, Tonti was Chadoxin Jig, but Saya Woni, and Naranga, Luga, the Badroba, Tangin, Nasa, Koa, Boaga, Koa, Pablo, Sunday is a castle, Tillian, Chadoxin, Chussing, Domba, and Kyle, Danny. That didn't know nothing, Naranga, the Badroba, not to Koa, Tangi, the Colong and Thompson songs. And then Tiga, and Mapayuma, Roth, Jadon, Demba, Tenga, Yoa. Then to dodging the Colong and Tommy, Mom, Ten, Baby Colong, Sam Gawa, Chimbo top. Then said also a part of Japan, Tetangi, Jordan. Then Naranga did Drama never. Shed the Comboda or song.
Rinpoche continues to advise that having recited words of confession, having confessed all of our misdeeds, we should then continue with the repetition of the six-syllable mantra, of Amitabha. 6 syllables here means the Amitabha mantra, Om Amideva, free, not any other of these 6-syllable mantras, of which there are quite a few. And we would imagine that at the same time, while we repeat the mantra, from Amitabha's body descends nectar, which is like milk. This nectar enters through the crown of your head, which is at the upper end of our central channel, at the very top of our head, and through this crown of our head, it fills our entire body. We would imagine our entire body to be filled with this nectar to the very soles of its feet until it is completely filled, and at the same time as the nectar fills our body, all negativity is being washed out of our body in the shape of all sorts of unclean substances, blood, pus, tar-like substances, smoke, soot, whatever you name it, any kind of unspeakable unclean substance you can imagine, you would imagine to flow out of your body, particularly through your lower orifices and the soles of your feet, but also through the pores of all of your body. And you would imagine how underground there is Yama, the Lord of Death, who has a wide opened, wide gaping mouth like that of a crocodile or a sea monster, as they're literally called. You would imagine how he partakes of all of this negativity, all of these unclean substances which are washed out of your body, and how he is greatly pleased by this, how for him all of this has the qualities of 100 different tastes and of 1,000 different qualities, being completely inexhaustible. You would imagine that he's greatly pleased by this and that he accepts this as an offering, as a ransom for your life, as a substitute for your life, so that eventually he being the Lord of Death, he leaves you alone for another little while. After you have imagined this, you would then consider how your body has become completely pure, how it has completely been filled with this nectar, like a crystal vase filled with nectar, how it becomes like a crystal ball in itself, utterly pure, free of any contamination, free of any obscurations whatsoever. The last verse of this fourth chapter of Song of Kamachakna goes as follows. With faith and devotion, recite supplications or prayers, whichever you know, to the Lama Buddha above your head. Or, as it says, repeat, and in text here it says Benza Guru, which in all likelihood is a printing, is a spelling mistake. It should say Amideva instead of Benza Guru, since we have imagined Buddha Amitabha above our head. So it should read, or repeat the six-syllable Amitabha mantra, which is the essence of all prayers, not the Vajra Guru mantra, as it says erroneously in our text. So repeat this and pray in this way to the Buddha and the jewels, or the rare and precious ones, which you find above your head in the shape of the Buddha Amitabha. Then continue to imagine how he melts into light and merges inseparably with you. In this way, the enlightened body, speech, and awareness of the Guru become inseparably one with yourself, just like milk merges with water if poured into it. Rinpoche also uses the analogy here, if you pour milk into water, you cannot make out afterwards anymore which is which. They merge in such a way so that they become inseparably one. In the same way, you would consider that the mind stream, the enlightened awareness of the Guru, once you have imagined how he dissolved into yourself, becomes inseparably one with your own mind stream. And in this way, we're then advised by Kamachakna that in this way we have received, or we should consider to have received, all empowerments and blessings. All the blessing and inspiration and all empowerments, they are included in that. This is the visualization which is to be practiced at the end of such a session. And then at the very end, the last line, Chakma Rinpoche concludes saying, this song on the session of visualization practices, so to speak, is here is concluded.
The Sunday, Tumbayana, young Yokado, Maguba, Tumbayana, young Tumbata, Sarwani, Songdun Jubakin, Yoai. This was Songdun Jubatella, Longship of the Go, and Chukuto, Rungu, Changu. That's our song to Jubichan, Nanduna, Toba, Korek, Nandu, young lady, Nandu, Tongi Keparseva. That is Saturn song to Jubichan, Nandu, Natu, Jovaka, and Jobeko, and so on. They and Maranton Sandala, more Dumbala, Chuko, from Insarwala, Lungo, San Nasu Sun Jova, Jokote, and
when we sit down to practice in order to familiarize ourselves with what we call mind nature, we're often taught that the greatest, the most efficient practice that we could perform, or the greatest realization that we could go for in our practice, is the realization of Mahamudra itself, which describes mind nature just as it simply is. Having heard such teachings time and again, we might often wonder, how can it possibly happen that through some kind of meditation technique I can indeed achieve the awakening of Buddhahood, I can indeed achieve the realization of what we call Mahamudra, such a big word, such a lofty goal. It is possible simply because that which we know as the three kayas is already potentially present within that mind stream of ours. The three kayas, which we have often heard of, the so-called Dharma kaya, the Sambhoga kaya, and the Nirmana kaya. The Dharma kaya being the formless aspect, whereas the Sambhoga and Nirmana kayas are the form aspects, the aspects of such realization which take a certain shape. This is, and we might wonder, how are these three kayas already potentially present within our mind? Well, if we look at our mind nature, if we examine mind as to whether or not it has a particular shape, it has a particular color, it comes from somewhere in particular, dwells somewhere in particular, or moves on to somewhere in particular, there is nothing whatsoever to be found. We can look time and again, and we will time and again come away empty-handed, because there is nothing to be found, there is nothing to be seen, there is nothing that could possibly be characterized in any such limited way. In this way, we experience mind, or mind nature, consciousness for that matter, as being empty, totally empty of any such characteristics whatsoever. This empty aspect of mind is nothing other than that which we call Dharmakaya. Yet at the same time, this formless Dharmakaya aspect of mind, this empty quality of mind, is also at all times vividly present. Even though it has no shape, even though it has no color or anything of such sort, it is vividly present. It is the very basis for anything whatsoever that we perceive, that happens within our perception, etc. and so forth. This clarity aspect of mind, this vividly present aspect of mind nature, is that which we call Sambhogakaya. It is totally empty, free of any characteristic that we could possibly dub onto it whatsoever, yet at all times vividly, clearly present. So here we have the Dharmakaya as well as the Sambhogakaya aspect. And then within this mind nature of ours, at all times, at all circumstances, there is the potential possibility for some activity, for some sort of perception, for anything of this sort to go on. In this way, the empty yet vividly present, vividly, clearly present mind nature manifests itself. And this ability to manifest as anything whatsoever is mind nature's Nirmanakaya aspect. So in this way, all these three, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya, are potentially present within our mind. Fully present, fully perfectly present, without anything lacking, without anything missing whatsoever. And because that is so, we are endowed with the potential to realize the Dharmakaya, the three kaya aspect of mind. We are endowed with the potential to eventually fully realize mind nature as it truly is, which is nothing other but Mahamudra. So we have heard of these things. Some of us have heard of these things many times, yet we still do not fully understand, we do not completely comprehend how these things actually are. We have heard how the three kayas are potentially present within our mind, how the potential for the realization of mind nature, of Mahamudra, is present within our mind. Without that being the case, such realization would not be possible in the first place. Yet we do not fully comprehend these facts. Rather, we make a fundamental error. We think of ourselves in terms of an I, or a self for that matter. All of this somehow produces the feeling of a self within ourselves to which we cling, under the influence of which we perform actions, the results of which we suffer time and again, and we just continue to do so. So as we familiarize ourselves with practice of this sort, we have to constantly remind ourselves and also to actively examine time and again how it is with this thing called mind nature, if even it were a thing, which of course it isn't. We have to rid ourselves gradually through our practice of the idea that there is a thing that could possibly be called a self. We have to come to understand that there has never ever been such a thing called a self or an I, and we have to rid ourselves of this fundamental error. To that end, let us try this out right here and now. Let us simply rest in the present moment. Let us simply be conscious, allow consciousness to rest in its natural state. And whenever a thought stirs, just stare it right in the face. Look right into its very essence and recognize that also the thought that happens in that mind stream of yours is nothing other but an expression of consciousness.
try on that is try.
Time for question.
And then I gave it all, send him to one. He's a Tenga, Europe, la madre, Tenga, and Pauline. You know, no, after Nayazum, that figure can each as on it. I think Kimbo Tommy towards it, and I don't like to make sense. And number three for possible, Kasi, you know, I think it gave our taste something like one mountain.
Let us again dedicate our merit that we have accumulated, particularly this time. Let us think of those who several weeks ago have died in a plane crash that was foreign. We came to Europe, about 50 people passed away. And also let us think of all of those beings who continuously keep dying and find themselves in the intermediate state. So let us dedicate our merit to all beings and to these in particular.